So the first question is, a lot of players have been asking for some naval elements such as carrier assault and dreadnoughts. Will any of them come back in the Pacific Theater?
I think what we've been doing, when we started to build the Pacific, it was clear that the events that took place was so vast. It was from big naval clashes to amphibious landings, to fights in jungles and everything. And as developers, we tried to see what fits, what we're trying to do best here. And it quickly became clear that invasion experience that I've been talking a lot about today was really what came at heart. Start from the ships and then do the whole beach landing and push into land, or like on Pacific Storm, that island hopping where your amphibious vehicles become super important. So I think that's the focus we've been having, and I feel that the team has really managed to rally around it, and it tells a story that is super interesting to our players.
If there will be any tanks prepared for the Japanese army, I believe it's quite difficult trying to balance them, right? The Japanese tanks are quite infamous for being insufficient in both armor and firepower when you compare the US tanks.
That's an interesting point. I think what we as developers always do, it is really, if we take Battlefield 1, where we had kind of the birth of tanks, they all came with, one had a gun in the front, one had guns on the side. They all came with very different characteristics, and for us, we always read up on the vehicles and the weapons and everything, and then we do our interpretation, since in the end we want a balanced battlefield. So we try to turn the uniqueness of each tank into potential upside, and then with the unlocks and customization that our players have, in the end you will have a lot of different tools in your toolbox instead of having exactly the same ones. So I think whatever historical characteristics and potential weaknesses that the tanks had, we still try to turn them into a positive in terms of gameplay flavor.
Compared with the major DLC in past Battlefront titles, what are the size of the Pacific Theater contents you're preparing?
So these days we see it less as the premium model as we had before. So in the old days, when you bought the game and then you bought into premium, which then gave you a certain number of packs. But it was clear to us that this model splintered the community, where we had some players who had all of the maps and some players only had a few. These days, with Battlefield 5, we're really happy with the fact that all gameplay content that comes post-launch becomes available to our players in terms of maps and vehicles and so on. So here we think less about doing major drops, and rather doing a constant journey for our players through Tides of War, where every week should come with an interesting experience or new goals to achieve. And like the Pacific brings a new theater as well. So it's a constant journey that we're on, and as such, there isn't a standard size for what anything should be. The most important thing is to bring new, interesting and an engaging experience to our players.
Will future chapters, such as Chapter 6, still expand upon the Pacific Theater, such as chronologically going into Okinawa, or are we looking at maybe perhaps going back to the Western Front?
So, here today we're looking at and talking about the launch of the War in the Pacific with Chapter 5, and we're giving you a first glimpse of what we're going to take to place during Chapter 5 with Wake Island. So that's really what we'll be talking about here today, and wherever we might take Battlefield 5 later on, that's for later conversations.
So the modes Fortress and Grind both have been a lot of fun. Are you looking at perhaps any other futuristic attempts of creating new modes or changing current modes to adapt for these current maps?
So in general, I'm happy to hear that both Grind and so on has been appreciated, and I think that's the very that's at heart of what we do. I think the shift in mind for Battlefield 5 has been in the old days where we already quite far ahead knew that we will go to do this expansion and that expansion and that expansion. This time around it's more of a constant conversation and listening in on where the community wants us to go and wants us to do. So as such we try to enable the team to be creative. Whether they have a certain map like Operation Underground, which was a passion project in the team that came from the original designer from Metro, the old map from Battlefield 3. That came as a passion project and it became a map that the community then loved. So these days it's less about strict map packs and rather about continuously trying to listen into community. What are they interested in? If they love grind, for example, let's see what more we can do. So, continue to give us feedback, continue to play and let us know what you like and what would you love to see in the future. And we continuously do our outermost to please as many people as possible.
Mm-hmm. On the same theme, some modes such as Outpost are also many fans' favorite. Do you think that will be coming again anytime soon, or maybe something similar to that?
I think I'm super happy to hear or see the reaction on Outpost as a game mode, and with Grind and Outpost, I think what we're trying to do is to capture new experiences that our players haven't experienced in a way before, or to give you different types of modes to play for different occasions. At heart of it, it's find new gameplay experience and also continuously keep the game fresh. So rest assured, the team is working hard day and night downstairs to see what should we do next and how do we continue to evolve the game. So I have nothing more to kind of reveal here today, but smart men and women are working hard on making more cool stuff. So we'll see where we take you in the future.
Do you have any updates prepared for Firestorm?
I think Firestorm is an interesting part where we really managed to capture a different part of the audience with Firestorm, and with improvements done and so on, we've seen the continuous interest. So I think from this summer and onwards, we've been pushing hard as a team to refocus our efforts, both in launching cool experience like Alsendan, Lofoten, Provence and Operation Underground, but also working hard with stability and quality improvements, everything to build up to the launch of the Pacific. So it's one game and we continuously look at what we can do. Here and now, it's no hiding that there's an enormous focus on launching a rock-solid experience with the Pacific, and we can't wait to see now when players will start to get their hands on it, how they will receive it.
I remember that you said you've kept the Battlefield 1942 materials in your locker. Was that the same for Pacific Theater? Did you research the history and sites from scratch?
So, there's no hiding that I'm old and grey. And I've been around since 1999 when we did the first prototype of Battlefield. And ever since, with Battlefield 1942, I still have the design documents in my locker downstairs and concept images and so on. So when it was time now to go to the Pacific again, we definitely looked at, for example, the different iterations we've done on Wake Island through the years, or Iwo Jima, to let that inspire us and teach us. A person without history has a harder time to dictate its own future. So by knowing your past, it's easier to steer the way forward, but not be driven by it. So we've looked at everything we've done before, but also with the new technology, the new possibilities, we also wanted to take an opportunity to, for example, portray Iwo Jima in a way we couldn't do before. When you see the one in 1942 and the one in 1943, those Iwo Jima maps were portraying, a beautiful paradise with sandy beaches no tunnels, and a very different experience. This time around, the team gone out of their way. We sent them to Hawaii to capture all of the different biomes we needed to build the game, to kind of capture these black sands, the lava rocks, and also study thoroughly kind of how, for example, the Japanese people fortified the island, how they were intents to build, I think, 23 kilometers of tunnels to connect the different points. I think they got to 16 kilometers. So there's a lot of research done by the team to understand what took place, so that we in the end then can build a solid game experience around it. So lots of new research, but also of course inspired by the past and all of the movies that are out there.
Working with World War II history means constantly having to work with some sensitive and even some contradictory elements, especially if you intend to pay a lot of respect to history. Did you have any kind of difficult choices when you were developing the game? If you could tell us anything or kind of what your thought process is for do that work,
Yeah.
it'd be great.
With the Battlefield franchise, and you know, starting back in the old days with the Second World War, and we've been to Vietnam, we've been into the future with 2142, we've been portraying contemporary warfare in the Middle East and in China in many of our titles. And now going back to the Second World War, I think there's extra care and caution that needs to be put into it as with the internet and awareness in general of our history becomes stronger and stronger. So for us, it's always important to build, ultimately we want to build the best possible Second World War game you've ever experienced. And with that, for us, it's a sandbox where you can play out your stories, you can play your journey from the ships up to the mountain of Iwo Jima, the top of Mount Suribashi, or you can be the one who stood fast and stopped the invasion. So all of that is kind of those gameplay stories we want to portray. But for Battlefield, it's always important that in the end it is a game, and we try to work super hard with all the material, all the content we put into the game to walk a fine line, to still do it in a respectful way, since in the end it's a game and we are doing entertainment, and this is still a history that we should treat respectfully.
Do you have any messages for the Japanese players?
Oh yes, I mean, I would like to, look directly at the camera and say that, having worked with Battlefield for all this time, and where it all started with Battlefield 1942, and we got the question whether we should localize for Japan. In the end, we pushed hard, and the Japanese territory told us that, yes, localize, there is a sincere interest over here to play it. And in the end, we pushed through and we got it localized, and we got an enormous response from the Japanese audience. And since then, I've been in many interviews with media and players from Japan, and always felt a very strong support. So from that perspective, now coming back to the Pacific again and portraying the Japanese forces, I think the team has worked super hard to deliver both the American and the Japanese forces in a very strong way, and to do it in a respectful way. So, from the bottom of my heart, I would like to thank you for all the support through the years, and for all the great times we've had together on the battlefield. And I'm looking forward to many more years and many more battles of Battlefield with you.
Oh my god.
This is
Oh. It's beautiful. What a wonderful surprise. Do I? Yes.
Okay.
Now I feel like the man in the trailer. That's a beautiful gift. Thank you so much. It's going to be a happy team that sees this. Well, thank you so much.
Ja.